Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So hi everyone, welcome to our Chester Library. I like to call these our virtual learning experience because I think all of us find out interesting information and, oops, my slide's not working. And so with that, we're gonna have an informal session, but just a few things since we have this session is being recorded. As you all know, the library is still closed. However, we are accepting items through our Dropbox. And Sarah and Betsy, you can always interrupt me if I miss anything. But we are waiving our fines until June 30th. You can certainly take advantage of our digital products. We've lifted all the fines and we are happy to assist you. Betsy and Sarah, who are even on this call today, you can see them. They're really great at working with patrons. And today, this session is our Behind the Book series at Chester Library. There's our main desk. And we will be reviewing and talking with the author of The Queen of Owls, which is Barbara Lynn Probst. Did I pronounce it correct?
Probst.
Probst. That's my Pennsylvania accent. I apologize. So before we begin, I just want to let everyone know, thoughts and opinions are always welcome at the Chester Library in any of our talks. And those are strictly everyone's own opinion. We don't endorse or support any views on behalf of the Chester Library or for the Chester Library of the Chester Library. Certainly you're welcome to connect with Barbara personally with any book purchases or anything like that, or certainly we'll have the book in the library. And if you have, this is being recorded. I am happy to always pause a session if needed, because our patrons are a concern. And programs are available due to the generous support of the Friends of the Chester Library. They've always supported our library programs. And if I haven't met you and you're looking at this recording, my name is Donnella Tillery and I manage adult programs and library communications, and I will try very hard to moderate as effectively as possible. So with that, more interesting, our very special guest is Barbara. And right here, I'm just gonna slow down. I'm not gonna read the entire thing, but again, today's author is Barbara Lynn Probst. Yes.
Yes.
And she's a writer of fiction and nonfiction. And she lives in New York's Hudson Valley, which is a very nice area. And we're going to talk about today her debut novel, Queen of the Owls. And this is a very powerful story of a woman's search for wholeness framed around the art and life of an iconic painter, American painter, and specifically that is the amazing Georgia O'Keeffe. And I'm not going to actually go through this. Barbara, I'd love for you to kind of talk through your bio, if you don't mind.
Sure. So here's me pre-pandemic hair. Anyway, no, I'm excited to be here. I think I just have to say that, I remember when I was a kid, the thrill of going to the library and getting my 10 books and carrying them home, every 2 weeks. Like it's so cool to be here. I just have to say that. But anyway, my own background is very eclectic. I've done many things. I've been a therapist, a college professor, an advocate for kids who don't fit into the usual boxes. I ran a not-for-profit to help the New York City public schools. I was a full-time mom. I mean, many, many things. And I feel like everything that one does in one's life helps you to be a better novelist, because all the things I've done, the common thread is a real curiosity about what makes people tick. Why do they suffer? What do they yearn for? What brings them joy and renewal and transformation and connection and meaning and identity? All of those powerful themes that really go into the best fiction. So even though I've only been doing fiction a couple of years, I feel like I've been preparing for it for many, many more years than that. And I've been very fortunate that Queen of the Owls has had an amazing reception. It was endorsed by all kinds of best-selling authors. It was named one of the best debut novels by all these big buzz things like Pop Sugar and Bustle and all those people. It was the recipient of several major awards from places like Independent Book Publishers Association, got a fabulous book list review, etc. So I'm really gratified and grateful by how it's been welcomed. So that's enough about that. You can see here the cover, and the two questions I get asked initially by people, first of all, is when did you get interested in owls? And there's no owls in the book. It's a metaphor, so it's not about birds. But the protagonist is a sort of bookworm, and she's always defined herself by her brain, so she's very owly, and she needs to claim and integrate and embrace and rejoice in all the parts of herself, especially the parts that she's neglected, avoided, been afraid of, her body, her beauty, her sensuality, and so forth. So I'm kind of giving away the meaning of the title. So if you're looking for a book about owls, this is not for you. So what Donnell is showing us here is the, on the left, I guess it's my left, the picture of a white iris, which is one of Georgia O'Keeffe's paintings that the brilliant cover designer used for the backdrop of the cover. So it's really cool. Can we go back to the cover for a second, just so that you could see, or I can hold it up here. Yeah, so you can see, so now you can see how she did that. It was really great. And so the book is, in a nutshell, about a woman's search for wholeness behind all the roles that she plays. She's a wife, she's a mother, she's a colleague, she's a sister, she's a friend, she's a teacher. But behind that, who am I really? How can I be whole? So it's framed around O'Keeffe, as Donella said, and you could go back to the second slide now, thank you. And George O'Keeffe was an amazing person. People also ask me, this is the other question, like, was I an art history major? Am I an artist? And the answer is no. But I was drawn to O'Keeffe, and in the course of writing the book, I learned a lot about her, and I'll share with you some of my research journey. And the more that I learned, the more it was clear to me that the book could not have been written any other way. You know, she was such an amazing person. She, well, first of all, she kept her maiden name when women simply didn't. This was 100 years ago. She defined herself by her work. She held her own in a male-dominated world. She pushed back against the male art critics who told her what her paintings were about. So she was very ahead of her time, and she had these various sides of her. She was known, if you've seen these paintings of her, as this very austere, almost monk-like figure in the desert, dressed in black, you know, stern. And then she also was, of course, this very voluptuous, very feminine person who posed for the man who later became her husband, photographer Alfred Stieglitz, in a series of nude paintings that were considered very scandalous and really rocked the art world and got her attention for things that in ways she wouldn't have chosen. So it's very, very complex figure. So I thought maybe I'll take you on a little bit of my research journey. I'm happy to read a page from the book, but I don't want it to just be reading. It's more fun to have a conversation. So let me take you on a little journey. We can go to the next slide. When I was first getting to know O'Keeffe, I discovered that she spent 9 weeks in Hawaii, which I had never known about. People think about her as those, you know, big, gorgeous flowers, or the bones and skulls and the deserts. But in fact, she went to Hawaii at a time in her life when she was really stuck. Her art was sort of stagnant. She was repeating herself. People were complaining that she had nothing new to offer. Her marriage was stuck. Her husband was having an affair and had betrayed her terribly. She was really, really in a desperate place. And so this time she spent in Hawaii in a landscape unlike anything she'd ever experienced, because the desert is dry heat and Hawaii is wet heat. It's everything's very verdant, very lush. And she returned with a fresh impulse, as if she had renewed herself there. So one of the early titles for Queen of the Owls was actually her own Hawaii, because my protagonist wants to find her own place of renewal and rebirth and transformation. We didn't use that title because it sounded like a travelogue or something like that. So here's one of the magic things that happened. So I'm Googling O'Keeffe, Hawaii, and what do I see? But there's going to be an exhibit at the New York Botanical Garden, which is, 20 minutes from my house, like in 3 weeks. The first time that the Hawaii paintings had been shown together as an entire group in 80 years. So I went to see it. Here's the poster of me with them in front of the exhibit. Like, it was incredible because it wasn't in New Mexico or Chicago. It wasn't last month, it was now. So it was really an extraordinary piece of luck. And the one that you see of the waterfall was one of my favorite of the series. It means a lot to the protagonist, Elizabeth, because it actually figures in the first few pages of the book when she's looking at this painting and feeling as if something is opening and emerging from the center of this valley, as if it's spilling forth. And it's a kind of call or yearning or metaphor for her to come forth out of this hidden valley that she's been in. So that's one of the paintings that O'Keeffe did there. I think there's another one on the next slide that I selected. Yes, on the left is Cup of Silver Ginger, which again plays a role in the story. I won't get into it, but it's kind of a special painting, I think. It almost makes you want to go inside it, as if it's three-dimensional. And the one on the other side with me in the picture is pretty neat, because this painting sold for $44.4 million, the highest price ever paid for a painting by a female artist ever. In fact, 3 times more than the next in line. And this was on show in Connecticut. I went to see it. And that's me like 2 inches from this painting. I don't know why they let me do it, but they did. So that was pretty neat. And the funny thing about how famous this painting is that O'Keeffe hated being called a female artist. She said, "I'm an artist. We don't say male artist." And she wanted to be beyond gender. At the same time, the feminists tried to make her their matriarch. There are all sorts of stories around that. But anyway, this is the most expensive painting ever by a woman. So I also there were several other exhibits of O'Keeffe's work that I went to see. And even, next slide, the one on again, it's my left with me in it. This painting I was very drawn to. It's called Black Iris, and it's not on view. So I arranged a special private showing. And I can just tell you that being in the room with the painting so close, just me and it, very, very powerful. So that was really cool. And I went and I visited places. I talked to people who had studied O'Keeffe. I spoke to someone who had lunch with her, knew her. But I wanted to see her work as many of her paintings by myself as I could. So that was kind of neat. And then on the next slide, you'll see some of my adventures. So I went to New Mexico to visit O'Keeffe's homes and the landscapes, the actual places that she painted. So I just selected a couple of pictures to show you. And again, very powerful to walk in the footsteps. And the other one is where she was born and grew up. Now, my protagonist is a doctoral student who's trying to write her dissertation on O'Keeffe's Hawaii paintings. And she's trying to understand O'Keeffe with her mind. So she meets a very charismatic photographer who tells her she'll never understand O'Keeffe or her art that way. She has to get under O'Keeffe's skin and do what O'Keeffe did and pose nude. So no, we're not going to see me posing nude, sorry. Or maybe not, but anyway, as my protagonist comes to understand O'Keeffe in a new way, she also comes to understand herself, obviously. And the other question there, the interesting thing was, here I'm writing about a real character who does not appear on the pages. It's not a historical novel. It's set on contemporary times, and O'Keeffe is in the background, so to speak, as Elizabeth's, avatar, muse, inspiration. But she makes interpretations of what O'Keeffe was feeling and experiencing. And so like how do I get to do that? And the way I did it is that these are Elizabeth's ideas through her perception, possibly through her own projection of her own needs. So I'm not trying to say that I wouldn't presume to interpret what O'Keeffe was really feeling in Hawaii, but Elizabeth does that because she needs to on her own journey, if that makes sense. So anyway, that's kind of a cool thing about it. I'm glad to talk about my writing process. Anything else, that I could talk for hours. So I want to focus on the things that would be of interest to you, but I thought it would be fun to show a few pictures, of my research, because that's not in the book and it's kind of cool. So please just tell me what you would like me to speak about.
So like Sarah, for example, Sarah, you're a writer. Would you like to know about how does her writing process more or anything like that? Yeah, Sarah, here's your chance.
Yeah, sure. I'm actually curious about, you said you had done a few different things. You were a therapist, you were a professor. What led you to writing novels?
Well, it's a great question. I actually wrote my first book when I was 7 years old. And I had written at various points in my life, poetry, short stories, stuff, never tried to publish any of it. And then later in life, I actually published 2 nonfiction books. One was a book for parents of quirky kids called When the Labels Don't Fit. Another was an academic book, and a million articles and, so forth. And I just had this unfinished part of me that wanted to go back to writing novels. And it's a different skill. You have to take workshops, classes. For me, I already had a PhD, so I wasn't going to go back and get some other MFA, but I did work very intensely with a couple of extraordinary mentors to learn the craft. So the answer to your question is that it was kind of always there with me, always, because when I was an academic and I was a researcher, I did what's called qualitative research, where I collected people's stories. So, and when you're a therapist, you're helping people find a new story. So it's really been the thread for me. So, yes, ma'am.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah. What made you pick O'Keeffe? I mean, she's a woman. Did you find that she's extraordinary, or what lured you to her in particular?
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you my secret story,
Okay.
and I'm going to move my head a little. So if you see this poster behind me,
Mhm.
that's a very famous O'Keeffe painting called Red Poppy.
Mhm.
And so when I got divorced, I am now, my ex and I are good friends. I'm happily repartnered, etc. But when he departed, and he took that flat screen TV that I wanted to get rid of. It was over the fireplace. I hated it. And there was this big empty space. So I wanted to fill it with something that represented who I am or was or wanted to be now. I went to an art store. I saw this poster. I bought it. I lived with it. It meant so much to me. It was just like a glorious, just proclaiming it's right. It's lush. It's sensuous, rich beauty. And I didn't think about it, but I think it was working in my subconscious and led me to O'Keeffe, because I didn't make the connection until 10 years later. So when actually I was giving an interview like this one with somebody, and all of a sudden my attention was caught on the painting that was behind me. And I said, oh my Lord, I suddenly put two and two together. So I think she always meant something special to me. But I didn't know very much about her, other than that I liked Black Iris, I liked the Orange Poppies, But I mean, I liked Vermeer, but I didn't ever think of writing a book around Vermeer, excuse me. So these are great, great questions. You see, you're going to get better stories from me if you ask the questions.
Go ahead, Betsy.
Well, two things. I saw that exhibit of Georgia O'Keeffe in Hawaii at the Botanical Garden. It was incredible, and I had only seen her desert paintings before.
Exactly.
And it was around so many Hawaiian indigenous Hawaiian plants, which was fascinating too, and all around. So that was a really unique experience, and the whole reason why she was there, which actually was on a commercial job for Dole Pineapple. But that was a very cool experience. And secondly, help me understand how you then go through your research process, because obviously this is a novel and you've done other types of writing. So help me understand, how does a writer research, and then the part B of this would be, is research different for writing a novel versus writing a nonfiction?
It's a great question. And it's just sort of focusing on the last part of it, and just also, like, it's cool you were there. Yeah. On my website, I have pictures of the plants, and then the paintings. And then I did go to Hawaii and saw some of the stuff for myself too. But that's, when you're an academic, your research is, again, with your mind in general. If you want to learn about something, you read books, you go to archives. And I did all that as well here. I went to the O'Keeffe Research Center in Santa Fe, and I found all kinds of clippings that are not available online and stuff about how her work was received. But I also felt I had to do a kind of embodied research, which was exactly what my protagonist is going through, which is why I had to physically go to these places and feel it, feel the desert air. When I write, I mean, I try to actually embody. For example, if I'm going to write a scene, there's a scene in the book where she goes up to, oh no, actually that's, never mind that one. But if I'm going to write a scene about somebody crossing the room and opening the refrigerator, I'll just make that up. I will actually get up from the desk and go and physically do it, so that I can feel it and write from the knowledge of what it feels like, and then put it, of course, into words. So And in the same way, another kind of, I would call it research. It's perhaps stretching the meaning of the word, but there are things that Elizabeth feels that are very painful. She feels that her husband doesn't really see her, doesn't desire her as a woman, likes her, admires her, is nice to her, but doesn't really see her. She yearns to be seen and known. And so I had to go back to some of my own painful experiences and go back there, even though they were long in the past, in order to find that authenticity and then re-embody it in the actions and scenes and words of a fictitious character. So this is not memoir, it's not catharsis, it's not thinly disguised, you know, Barbara working through whatever, but to write emotions. And I'm talking about the painful ones. I think it's also true with her delightful moments with her children. For example, my kids are adults now, but I went back in my feeling to when they were little guys. So you have to then, to me, to find the authenticity as a writer, you have to go into your own feelings, your own experience. I don't know if this makes any sense, but
yes, it does.
It's many faceted. I mean, of course, I had to learn facts about O'Keeffe just so I wouldn't make mistakes, but that's only one aspect of it. And I think that novels that are meaningful, that linger for us, have that truth in them, in the lines. We know it, we feel it too. We actually are part of the story. We enter it in a very powerful way that's more than just flipping the pages because it's a good plot, which this, by the way, also is. It is a page turner. So, you know, I use the word research in many ways.
Mm-hmm. 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 Thank you. That was very interesting.
Yeah.
Rosemary, I can't see you, but I want to see if you have a question. You're so low on your phone.
Did your story evolve as you were writing it, or did you have it in mind when you started the story?
These are fabulous questions. Writers are different. I have it always a general outline. In fact, I'm working on a third book now. My second one's coming out next April. It's long done. So I always have a general, maybe it's 6 single space pages of notes that I know I have a vision of where I'm going. But you have to leave room for the organic process of evolution, of listening to your characters as you get to know them better. They tell you what is needed. And so some of the most powerful scenes towards the end didn't come to me until I was well into the writing of the book. And I was like, oh, yes. Even the actual ending. I mean, I knew vaguely that she had to sort of go off into the sunset kind of thing. But the actual last few scenes just came once I was deep in it and I really knew Elizabeth much better. So I think if you don't leave room for a story to breathe, it's kind of mechanical, and I don't think it's going to have the life to it. On the other hand, it's not, you can't just be like lottie, because you have to have a vision of what is it you want to say about what it means to be human. And so that your story is all the time moving toward that, is true to that, isn't all over the place, you know, has a kind of coherence.
Okay, thank you. How long did it take you to write this book?
Well, a surprisingly short time, only about a year, which, because this particular novel, I have the other one I rewrote, you know, a zillion times, many versions, set it aside. This one really came to me very organically again. So really about it. But then, of course, I spent 6 months during various galleys just endlessly tweaking. I'm such a perfectionist. Take a word out, put a word back in, you know. So, but I mean, but if you're asking about the story itself rather than the refining of it, yeah, it was. I really lived and breathed it. I'm using the word breathe a lot today. I don't know why, but I really lived with it, in it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Lisa, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, well, a step back. I want to know how long it also took to write. So thank you for answering, asking and answering. But you were saying how you allow the characters to evolve and they present themselves. And maybe not in this book, but in other books or writings, do you ever like get into arguments like with the characters, like, no, you can't go there, I wanted this, I envisioned this for you, but yet the character just keeps evolving like the way that they want to evolve? So
Funny.
do you ever have arguments, you know, with yourself or with the characters as your process?
And I've heard authors say that. For me, the experience with this book was a little different. And this is thanks to my tough love mentor, who helped me find the complexity and depth in some of the secondary characters. So like her sister and her husband were initially a little bit one-dimensional, frankly. And so I didn't feel them. I didn't feel them enough. And I had to let them become more complex and nuanced. So like my mentor said to me about Elizabeth's husband, you know, why are you making him such a jerk? Why can't he be a good person? But he just limited. He means well in his own way, but he's never going to be what she needs. But that doesn't mean he has to be a jerk. And so I had to search to get to know Ben and find the parts of him I could respect and like and treasure even. So same thing with the sister. Those two in particular demanded that I make them more fully human. And so there were some surprises that emerged from that, particularly with the sister. Some of the things she did towards the end, I wouldn't have foreseen. But it wasn't because I was trying to make her do something else. It was because once I got to know her, I understood she had to do certain things differently than I had thought. But I think it's important, even the minor characters need to be real. And that takes some going the extra mile as a writer. So that's my answer to your question.
Yeah. Now you also said the character, she wanted to be seen, she wasn't understood. Do you think that O'Keeffe, through her paintings, which she was trying to show, she was also trying to be seen, to be thought of, for people to know her? I mean, is there some, you know, coalition there like that? That's why, I mean, you have, you know, the character in the book, but then you have, you know, O'Keeffe. So did you pick, you know, O'Keeffe because of the similarities in the character? I don't know if I'm getting my point out.
You are. I would say, I don't know what O'Keeffe wanted or felt. She was very clear when people asked her questions about herself. She would say, just look at the paintings. So, but that said, being a visual artist, she was all about seeing the world. She would often paint take something small and paint it on a very big scale. And she said it was to make people stop and actually look. She would also paint a part of something to force you to really see the part that could speak perhaps more clearly than the whole could. So she's quoted, there's many things she said about seeing, how to see the world, how to stop and look. And there's interesting stuff in the book about this because her husband Stieglitz, as a photographer, was also about trying to make things visible. There's a lot in the book about this, and I couldn't do justice to it right now. But certainly it's a theme that has many aspects to it and can be understood from the most concrete to the most metaphorical level, right? We want to see, we want to have our eyes open, be awakened, not have illusions, right? It's a very rich subject. And one of the things that's kind of neat, I think, is people who've read the book have often said to me, you know, I had to stop and go look up the painting that she was talking about. So they would actually stop and learn something during the course of reading What's a Good Story. So that's kind of neat.
Thank you.
So what do you think what do you want the takeaway to be, Barbara, for people when they read your book? Because that's a good point, how you said people wanted to research Georgia O'Keeffe and see more.
Yeah, well, you know, Elizabeth wants to be whole. She feels that there's some part of herself she's been afraid to own. And so she has to go outside her comfort zone, and maybe some of her choices might have been ill-advised, but how else do we grow without taking risks? And so that sense of being willing to claim what it is you feel is missing in you, to be your authentic whole self, to dare to do that. Now, she doesn't do that by leaving her children and you know, me. It's not about, she's still trying to do right by those in her life, but also to do right by herself. And so insofar as the novel can inspire people to take their own journey, that's what I hope will be the lasting gift. The other thing I should add is that, you know, it's been a strange spring to be launching a book during a pandemic. And, you know, one's a bit uncomfortable with, yay, celebrate my book. But I feel that actually it's a privilege and an honor to have something to give the world that doesn't sound too arrogant. I mean, stories have always been a source of healing and comfort and growth and connection for people, especially in hard times. And so people have been reading more than ever this spring. Book sales have gone up. And so I really hope that I've been able to give something that's meaningful to people.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question? Go ahead, Betsy.
So what you just shared with us in regards to the character and the book is really can cause, when Danella asked, you know, what would you want the takeaway to be? Certainly a lot of opportunity for personal reflection and or the character reflects also, but certainly could bring about what you're asking. My question is, how did you find for yourself going through this process, having to put yourself in these situations, you know, remembering when your children were younger and all these other things? So what do you think, I can't say how do you change? That seems a little bit trite, but what do you find, if anything, that you ended up taking away from the writing process?
Yes, I understand.
For yourself.
Yep. There's somehow a kind of freedom in transforming what you've lived into fiction. It's like you cook. I wrote an essay called Cooking Life into Fiction. Your life is like this raw material, and you cook it into this dish that you give people to eat, really. And it's like freeing, it's liberating. And people ask like yourselves, they ask anything. So I'm not going to protect myself anymore. Why? I'm just going to give it up, give it out. And it's very, very freeing. And I feel a kind of generosity. So if you hold a book, you know, in your desk drawer, and you're afraid to risk what are people going to think of it or something, it's okay if that's what I mean. I'm not criticizing anybody, but once you give it out in public, you're exposed. You're out there, and it's just, there's something joyously freeing about that. And I don't think I understood it until I gave my first public talk. It's quite a powerful experience. And it was a whole group of women, and, you know, that was like we are today. And they got it. Everyone understood. And, you know, it was really, I was so grateful for that.
Thank you. That was really insightful. I had no idea what you would say. Thank you. That was very insightful.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not a question I get asked too often. I'm glad you asked it. And I just try to speak genuinely from the heart at this point. It's ridiculous to make up stories and try to make yourself look a certain way. It's just crazy, especially a certain point in life, you know. So, but what I want to say, I know we're going to run out of time soon. So, you know, in the book, here it is. I don't know if it's backward or forward in your screen.
It's fine. You're
No,
good.
it's good.
Okay, it's backward. Okay. And so if you want, obviously, you know, I'd love for people to pick up a copy. If you want to learn more about my journey, about my life, read the reviews, order it. My website is really easy. It's BarbaraLynnProbst, one word, .com. And it's LINN. So it's just one word. Or you can just look up Queen of the Owls, you'll find me. But I love to hear from people. And the best part of this is getting emails from people who say, oh my gosh, you told my story. This book meant so much to me. It just doesn't get any better than that. So I really love hearing from people. Please do, if you wish. So.
You're great, Barbara. Hold on one sec.
I have one more question.
Oh, yes.
Oh, go ahead, Betsy. Please do.
I just wanted to ask, where you live in the Hudson River Valley?
Well, I don't give my town out publicly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm familiar with Columbia County, Chatham, all of that area there.
Upper Putnam, I'll just say.
Yeah, that doesn't, I don't even know where that is, but that's good enough. Okay, thank you.
Because you don't even know some weird person's going to watch this and go find me, you know?
I respect that, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're recording, Betsy.
Yeah, uh-oh, okay.
You can cut that part out of that part you can.
No,
Well, I still don't know where Upper Putnam is, so.
Any other questions? I mean, you know, if you guys want to have a couple other questions, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's okay with Barbara, I don't mind.
Yeah.
Well, I'm interested in Sarah because Sarah said she wanted to be a writer. Did this, you know, like really open up or give some really good insight? And if, what type of writer do you want to be? And will you be writing about what's going on right now with all of that?
Yeah, this definitely gave some good insight. I have notes I've been jotting down. Thank you very much.
I want to say something to you, Sarah, though. Two things I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about the story. Don't let anybody give you some template about how it has to be. With 25%, this has to happen, and then there has to be this emotional turning point. And don't listen. It has to be a story that you are passionate to tell, and you can always go back and tweak and you know, revise it to make more, but get the story, be a servant of the story.
That was very nicely put. Be a servant of the story. Tell the story you want to. That was very good, Barbara. Very
What I've
insightful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because
Thank
there's so
you.
much advice out there. It's like as if this was some kind of a paint by numbers thing, you know?
Mm.
And I'm not saying that there doesn't have to be tension and points of choice and all that stuff. Yeah. But the main thing is that there's a story that needs to be told, and let yourself be the midwife. You know, the be at the service of it.
Thank you. I'll write that down.
I cut you off, Sarah, and I'm really sorry, but I just.
Oh no, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Find
too,
a
I'm
good-
gonna say, yeah, this
find
is
a
good.
good
Go,
teacher.
Barbara.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
we
this
can
is
cut
great.
this out of the final. When you can cut this part out too, because this is just kind of between.
Yeah,
us.
so I'm gonna just everyone.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop the recording. Yeah, I mean, because we have a few minutes, but I'm just gonna officially stop the recording.
Okay.
But you can certainly stay on and ask Barbara questions. But thank you for those of you who are looking at this recording in the future. Thank you. This is Chester Library with our amazing author. And feel free. And another thing too, Barbara, I sent everyone links to your website. And
Oh, great.
Great. Mm-hmm.
it is,
Yeah.
but I'll resend it out because what I do is I like to send everyone the recording again. So you're all welcome to share it as well. It'll be on Chester Library on YouTube, and then you can send it to friends. Because I think, Barbara, you really did a great job, and it was really, really intriguing and interesting. She told me a couple things about the books. I was like, I can't wait for people to hear about it.
I would also add that it's really very much a book club book. There's 12 discussion questions at the end,
No.
as there are
Oh, good to know.
open-ended issues. And I've been in book club meetings where people have very different opinions about things. Again, I don't want to get into that now because y'all haven't read it, but there are no easy answers to many of the aspects of the book. So